Adventure of Pipeman on W4CY Radio.
Wake up, America! It's time for the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY.com, West Palm Beach's #1 internet radio station. Here's your host, the Pipeman.
This is the Pipeman here on the Adventures of Pipeman, W4CY Radio, with the Positively Pipeman segment of the Adventures of Pipeman. And we're here with our resident pet health guru, who is also a human health guru, and has some great advice for us about raw dairy for pets. Let's learn those right choices, Bill.
Hey, raw dairy, of course, is all over the place, as far as in the news, how terrible it is. I saw a report this past week, I guess it was, that we're looking at causes of death, and there were 250,000 deaths that were mentioned in articles that we're talking about raw milk. But, there was a slight problem with that. That was the number of deaths caused by medical malpractice.
Wow.
Doctor mistakes.
Wow.
In 1 year. So we looked up the numbers on the number of deaths on raw dairy products. For the last 15 years, it was 0.
Wow.
Deaths. But yet it's dominating the news. They're raiding farms or shutting down, dairy farms, raiding stores. I mean, we had it happen right down here in Boca at one of the grocery stores that used to sell raw milk, where they actually came in with a SWAT team to confiscate raw milk. I mean, okay, but when you stop and think about it, every mammal on the face of the earth starts life with raw milk.
Huh.
It's a substance of life. And yet
What a concept.
we've been brainwashed that raw milk is dangerous. Why? It's very simple. It's a very simple thing. Big food they're looking to save money on expenses, but maximize profit. In order to have raw dairy to be safe, according to what the government tells us, we have to have it pasteurized, sterilized, whatever, because it's coming in contaminated. Well, if your food supply is coming in contaminated, where's the contamination starting? On the farm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes sense.
So if if your barn is dirty, if your dairy barn is dirty and you've got sick cows and they're on, antibiotics and hormones and steroids and things of that nature, okay, and on bad feed, bad sheep feed, GMO corns and soys and things like that, I can produce a lot of milk, or at least a white substance that looks like milk, and send it over to a factory, basically, which is what the dairies are, add a bunch of filters on there and take out the parts that I want, parts of the heavy cream. We can sell that separately. I can take out the whey and we can sell that as a supplement for the workout people. I can take out the lactase, which is the enzyme that's in milk that allows us to digest it. So now we're all lactose intolerant. We all have dairy allergies, that sort of thing, because we can't digest it properly. But that enzyme was processed, put into a jar, into a bottle, sold at the pharmacy, so you can now digest milk again. And a raw product, it's there. It's complete. And it goes back even farther than that, is the economics of it. Okay, if I'm producing a ton of milk, literally, cheaply, I'm going to make more profit. That sort of thing. Now, the typical dairy cow that you see on commercials and on, all the brochures, programs, everything else, you see these huge black and white Holstein cows. Those suckers make up to 15 gallons a day. They're nothing
Wow.
more than a producing machine, but there's no nutritive value to it because they've been fed bad, they've been given hormones, enzymes, that sort of thing, but they provide a large quantity.
Mm.
Now, when we go to the farms that basically specialize in raw milk, okay, those barns are spotless. Those milking parlors are spotless. They're generally small individual farms as well. I mean, a good sized farm might have 150, 100 head of dairy cows that they're taking care of. The average Holstein dairy might have 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 that they're milking every day. So the quantity of milk is going to be tiny because these raw milk people are using Jersey or Guernsey cows, which are about half the size. They produce about 7 or 8 gallons of milk a day. However, when you buy that milk, when you consume that milk, and you have it in your glass jar, your milk jug, there is one up to 1/3 of it is cream, butterfat,
Wow.
nutrient dense, completely different product than what we're getting out of those Holsteins that have almost no cream at all. But when you look at the price, raw milk is going to be more expensive.
Yeah.
And because it's nutrient dense, because it's a clean product, we don't have to process it. And of course, if it's not processed, the government makes no money because they got to have their inspector at the dairy. They don't have it at the farm. So we
Yeah.
just lost a whole bunch of government employees, which is probably the worst thing in the world that could ever happen. We need those government employees all the time, those inspectors that are standing there looking at the milk coming out.
Very
That's,
essential.
yes, exactly. And of course, we're running the same thing with slaughter and everything else. But it's a pure product and it's healthy. And of course, who complains about people selling raw milk? The big dairies, the big food
Yeah.
companies that own them.
Yeah.
Okay, because they can't sell their product against a quality product. And of course, on the other side of that, you've got all the medical people that are jumping on the back side of that because we're selling a product in raw milk that has natural antibodies in it, probiotics in it, prebiotics in it. Okay, so we're actually healing the body, and we don't need a doctor. It's
Mm.
funny, and a little bit of the history on how this whole phenomenon happened. Back in the late 1800s, when cities started to come together, the farms were outside the cities, obviously, and the more population is there, the more demand there is for product. Well, we didn't have refrigeration back in the late 1800s. So we had to basically carry the milk into the cities if that's what they wanted. Well, chances are no refrigeration, on a
Mhm.
wagon, several hours in the sun. Bad product. It's already starting to ferment. But actually, that's not actually bad in raw dairy because now you have basically the formation of what we call today either kefir or yogurt.
That's
I mean, it
funny
was
because I was going to ask you about that goat milk that you buy called kefir that I've tried and I cannot drink that. It's
either do I.
uh
But that's a fermented milk. I mean, I literally have clients that leave their raw milk on the counter up to a month. And we think it's souring, but it's not souring. It's not bad. It's not turning bad. It's just changing form.
yeah.
But how this all happened? Because we could not get the milk into the cities, in the big cities. The biggest industry in these big cities at that point in time, with the exception of some manufacturing jobs, is we started to produce cars and bicycles and stuff like that, was distilleries
Mm.
making booze, if you will, alcohol. Okay, breweries, distilleries, all of that, and they use a tremendous amount of grain. And of course, that's how they make it. They ferment that. But after the fermentation process, as they extract the liquid, we have to dispose of the grain that's already basically very, very bad. They found that they could feed that to cattle as a feed, and they would survive. I'm not going to say they'll thrive, that it was good food for them, but they could survive. So the breweries actually built dairy facilities, basically just warehouses where they kept dairy cattle,
Hmm.
and to compete against the farmer. They can't bring it in. So now I've got fresh milk in the city that from cows that are dying because we're feeding them poison. The conveyor comes right out of the distillery and into the barn. Literally, at some of the reports where they actually had to string the cows up from the rafters because they were so weak that they couldn't stand up. The food was that deficient. The milk was gray color, just putrid smell, everything else. And actually, it's some of them were actually adding white paint to the milk to make it look white, along
Oh
with
my
all kinds
God.
of molasses to make it sweet, all kinds of other additives and that sort of thing. And people did get sick because of that. And of course, they were blaming it on milk on the good milk coming in without refrigeration,
Mm.
not the bad milk that they were selling.
Wow. And I
And
want to know, I want to know too. Okay, so like you go in a grocery store nowadays and almond milk is a big thing. Okay. But they have almond milk that is in the same place as the other milk in the refrigerated section, and they have almond milk that's not refrigerated, same brand. How does that happen? How do you have unrefrigerated?
well, of course, because with what's called Tetra Paks and different packaging and preservatives they add to it, they can do it either way. Now, on the same side of that, it goes into the refrigerator because we're trying to make it an equivalent to real milk, which,
Mm.
by the way, in a supermarket is not even milk. That's a chemical concoction because they've already stolen all the stuff out I mentioned before. So we have nothing more than chemical concoctions in both of them. And by the way, when we look at the alternative milks, the oat milk, the almond milk, cashew milk, soy milk, all of that, I still haven't figured out how to milk them. They don't have the right equipment to do that. And of course, there's also that whole part about you have to kill all the germs, the pasteurization. We can't have it without pasteurization. Well, my question is, a calf is born. Okay, they don't drink pasteurized milk. They go right to mommy and start nursing. No washing, no sanitizing, nothing else. Um, same thing with sheep, same thing with puppies, kittens, and even mom, when baby is hungry, we just whip it out. We don't disinfect. We're not cleaning. We're not washing. The baby just nurses, and they're alive. Can you imagine that? Without that, without man putting some sort of chemical or process into it, that we could actually live.
Hmm. Wow. What
You
a
know,
concept.
yeah. And I mean, stop and think about even some of these teenagers and of course homeless women and things like that. You're living on the street. You're pregnant. You give birth. What are they? What are these babies exposed to? Yet they're healthy
Huh.
because the nutrition is in. Even as bad as mom's nutrition could be, the body has a way of pulling out what it needs
Yeah.
and moving it around to sustain life. That's why it's called a miracle of life.
I also don't see cows going around and milking humans.
No, because they don't have to. But and there's always that argument. Well, we're not supposed to. After like when I look at dogs, okay, we wean them at 6 weeks of age. Why? Convenience. We want to sell the puppy.
Yeah.
Okay. Why do women quit breastfeeding at 2, 3, 5 months, 6 months? Because big milk replacer companies that make profit off of soy and corn and all kinds of garbage chemical solutions want to sell them an artificial milk because it's convenient. Mom doesn't have to nurse anymore. You know, But yet, when you start looking in the archives and looking through personal experiences and that sort of thing, there's a lot of women that are still nursing at 3, 4, 5 years old. It's not the main part of the diet, but that nutrition, that again, that energy of life is something you can't get out of processed food, processed baby foods,
No.
any of that stuff. Um, and, you know, people, when, especially infants, kids, and that sort of thing, that have been fed raw milk generally don't have allergy problems. And, some of the other things, and of course, when you look at,
People on kids on formula do, though.
yes, exactly. And when you look at it, okay, why do we have to add vitamin D to supermarket milk? Because they stole it. Fortified with vitamin D.
Well, here's a perfect thing is like with anything, why we wouldn't need supplements if you would just give us the real food.
Yes. Yeah. All our nutrients have to come biologically, should be coming from our food. And I've had people come in even with our diets for animals and stuff like that. It's like, Bill, I'm feeding a raw diet to my dog. It's been 6 months. It's been a year. Where are they getting the nutrients? I mean, if there were no nutrients they better be in the food. Otherwise, your dog is dead.
Well, and also the nutrients that are in a food opposed to that are manufactured in a supplement are definitely much better. The only reason people need supplements is because they're not putting good stuff in their body. It's like a perfect example is iron. So a lot of people don't realize that iron, the body does not have ability to expel it. So if you take iron supplements because your iron's low or you think your iron's low, you're actually poisoning your body. Whereas if you ate food that had iron in it, that would be very difficult to do, to poison your body from too much iron from food.
Well, in fact, just to kind of give you a little bit of an example on that, on the Pet Health Cafe this past week, I had Morley Robbins, who is a mineral specialist, actually, 50 years in the medical field, doing research, everything else. Everybody is anemic according to the doctor because they're testing blood. There's very little iron in the blood quite often because it's stored in tissue.
Which is why the body can't expel it.
Exactly. It's got to be freed. But it's also blocking the copper on top of that. And that I recommend that people go on and listen to that interview on Pet Health Cafe because it tells you a lot about that. And it's the truth. We're actually poisoning ourselves with these medications and that sort of thing, the iron. Nature has a way of making it perfect, bioavailable. Supplements are not, they're synthetic. The body doesn't know what to use it. And of course, the problem with that, because it doesn't know what to do with it, it has this use it, in nature, it's use it or lose it. Any excess is going to come out of your body.
Yeah.
In synthetics, the body says, I don't know what the hell to do with this. Why is he giving this to me? Let me store it in my body for later on in case I find a use for it. Let's store it in fat cells.
I'll give you a good, sorry, go ahead.
What's the biggest issue that people are dealing with today? Being overweight, fat. And, the body's a lot like...
storing all this stuff for later.
Exactly. And here's the funny part about it that I talk about all the time. Our body is like women with shoes. When they get too many shoes in the closet and it's full, they don't throw any out. They have somebody make them another closet for more storage. The body's the same way. When I'm filled with toxins, I build more fat cells to store it. It's that simple.
I'll give two examples too, okay, personally. Okay, so one is, first of all, when your body's storing it for later use, it's like when I have these folders in my Outlook and I store the emails that are not important to me. They take up a lot of space. I probably never even look at them. And at some point, I have to delete them anyway because I ran out of storage.
Right.
Or I have to upgrade my storage for stuff I don't even use.
Yes.
And then, the thing is that, you're right. Your body needs to know to expel stuff. It needs to. These are foreign things, even though they're supplements going into your body, like so you don't know. And how do you know what's in those supplements either?
You
Like
don't.
you go buy these supplements. Most of them are garbage.
Yes.
And do they do anything? Most of the time, they don't. You know, unless it's for a very specific reason.
Yes.
Okay, very specific. But the thing is, like, okay, so people love to load up on vitamin B, which I'm all for vitamin B. But what happens is when you pee and it's so bright yellow, that's because you just took a bunch of stuff your body didn't need and it was a waste. Okay.
Absolutely.
And there's so many examples of that, you know, even certain things you were talking about before that it can cause you to be sick. These things that are supposed to be good for you can cause you to be sick because it's too much. And there's so many of them. Okay. Like, every perfect example, every time I get a B12 shot, I freak out. Why do I freak out? Guess why I freak out.
It's not natural. Number one, it's not
I
natural.
freak
It will
out
give you
when I
energy.
pee. I freak out when I pee
Yes.
because it's the same color as was in the injection, this bright red. But I
Yep.
forget for a second that I got that injection of vitamin B12. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm bleeding. And
See?
of course, when I'm bleeding, I'm thinking, oh shit, it's my kidney stone. Okay, so let's go with kidney stones too. We were talking about them. Okay, and the fact is that, and we talked about them in the previous episode. But listen,
Yeah.
kidney stones sometimes and a lot of time are from taking too much supplements like vitamin C. Like
Exactly.
multiple times that I've gotten kidney stones, it was because I was sick and I pumped myself with vitamin C, or the Colby's or the airborne, and like, does it not a does it not even occur to somebody when they read the label that you're getting 10,000% of the daily allowance that you don't
Yeah.
that's not good. Why do people think that's good? They think the more the better. No, the more the not better. Because again, like you were saying, okay, if your body takes what it needs from it and doesn't know what to do with anything else, it stores it, and that causes all kinds of problems. And that's what happens. You take too much vitamin C, it calcifies, which is a kidney stone.
Yes.
You know,
It's the other part of that. Okay, as a supplement, we're trying to isolate something. Like you mentioned, we don't know how it's made. We don't know how it was extracted. We don't know whether it's bioavailable, whether the body can actually use it. If it can't use it, it stores it in fat cells. But when we look at all foods, and I worked on a couple of research projects where we were doing, trials and that sort of thing with supplements. And the problem is everybody's trying to extract a certain compound that's going to be the catch-all, if you will, that we can patent and make a ton of money on. Well, we find when we do these extractions to make these different minerals and these different vitamins and all of that, the power of the actual product that does the thing, the plant, the animal, whatever the food is, it's about using the synergy of the whole. Every single compound's got little triggers, and if you will, and little plugins. Like if you're thinking a computer, I need this plugin for this to work. If I take that plugin out, this doesn't work. It's the same thing with nutrients. You need different nutrients for synergy. Make them utilized properly. And when you look at the supplements too, if I take, and I've been doing a lot with bioidenticals with women, and it's like that's the biggest lie that's ever been out there, I think, in a medical community, because they're not identical. Number one, they're all synthetic. Number two, they are actually adding in, mine's compounded, I go to a specialist. Well, they're still also putting in chemicals that are going to suppress the symptoms that a menopause woman would have.
yeah.
And that's the problem, because we think it's balancing us out. It's throwing you farther off in the long range. And when you replace one vitamin let's just take the calcium, for instance. You can't use calcium if you don't have phosphorus, magnesium, and manganese. So if I'm only putting one in, it throws off the balance on the others.
Yeah.
And of course, the other thing, vitamin C. What they sell as vitamin C is not vitamin C. It's not even close to it. So you're not getting the benefit. B vitamins. I kid with clients all the time. Well, I went and got a B12 shot. Okay, that's great. Okay, B12. The B vitamins are in liver. Nobody wants to eat liver though, because that's that's
Except my dad, he loved liver.
Yeah,
He loved liver and onions and chopped liver.
exactly. But I can't do that. Well, stop and think about it though. If that B12 shot made you feel that much better, what would the real thing do? Maybe heal the body so you don't need the extra B12?
Mm.
I know.
What a concept, right?
Yeah, what a concept. We're getting our nutrients from our food. And whatever's left over, the body says, I know what to get rid of. I don't have to store the.
And what a concept,
well.
we're healing ourselves. What a concept.
Yeah.
Listen, you were talking about money before. Like, there's so many things in the world we can make money off of. Why does it have to be off of somebody's health?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there was the business model that was developed back, like I said, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when we eliminated, homeopathic and holistic hospitals and healers. We had to go to a medicine-based health system. So we have to demonize anything that's going to challenge that. And raw milk does challenge that. It challenges that whole model because we're getting the nutrients we need. We're getting rid of what we don't need, and when we look at the synthetic forms, okay, that's when the allergies start up, like you said, lactose intolerance, um, all these secondary issues. And they don't just stop there. Of course, the calcium formula that's in raw milk, that's what builds your bones, your structure. Without structure, you're just a blob. Your teeth. I mean, dental stuff is rampant because of that. And it's not about the tooth in the dental area. Dentists are nothing but are cosmetic surgeons, basically, in reality. 90%, 90% of all dental problems are because of bone loss.
Yeah.
Okay, so why do we have bone loss? We don't have calcium, magnesium, manganese, phosphorus in a usable form. We need, in order for that complex to work, we need vitamin D. We need vitamin K2. We need a bunch of hormones. Our hormones are all screwed up because we put synthetic hormone-based milk, synthetic hormone-based milk in that product. So we screwed up the whole system.
We did.
That's what our body is.
That's what blows my mind is we have to buy stuff that's, poison-free, hormone-free, blah, 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 and pay more for it. That's stupid. Like, it should be cheaper, actually, you would think. But how do people find out more info about you, the Pet Health Guru, advice they can get from you and your show and all of your great real food for pets?
They can always go on to on the live show on Thursday nights, 8 o'clock, on all of our channels here, Pet Health Cafe. And listen to me rant like this on a regular basis, spreading the word. Pet Health Cafe, the Pet Health Guru's there, that's me. And we give the information on an ongoing basis. 18th season, unprecedented. Way before podcasts, we were doing podcasting and internet radio. But the information is there. So you can at least, if you want to go down that road, that's a place to start. Because then you can start to, when you hear the concepts, hear what we've brought forth for the last 18 years, it'll trigger the questions. When you do that, you can either do a personal consultation with me, or you can go to MyPaleoPet and MyPaleoPet.com, the store and the website, and look at the products that are there. And then start to do your selection. Have a great team behind me that can help you make the selections for the health issue that you may have. We don't make health advice. We just feed the body so that it can do it, and your body actually does make those choices. And yes, we do carry raw dairy, raw milk products in there. We have to label them because of labeling laws, for not for human consumption, because heaven help us that something that is living, it's a living product, is going to go into your body and heal you.
What a concept.
I know. And then we do various forms of it. We do the milks. We do probably the best raw chocolate milk that you could ever have. And actually, it's been proven that those of you that work out in the gym and everything else, raw chocolate milk made with real cacao, this is what we sell, is the best recovery supplement that you can give. And it's been scientifically proven. I mean, it's out in research now. We also do yogurts and, kefirs and raw butter. I mean, nothing better to cook in than raw butter. I mean, it's unbelievable, the taste and the flavor. And it doesn't cause high cholesterol, contrary to popular belief. And so I'm able to be reached there. The store number, 954-971-2500. Like you say, consultations are available there as well. Pet Health Cafe to listen to all the background stuff, formulate your questions, and I'm there to help.
Well, once again, great help to everybody and all of our listeners, and we look forward to more from you. I think next week we'll be talking about some home remedies that will help people out. So everybody make sure to tune in next week. But stay tuned here because we're doing some festival ticket giveaways coming up next, and then we will have our resident business expert, Michael Barbarita, give us some powerful business strategies that will help your business grow in 2026. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Incarceration, America's rock, metal, and tattoo festival returns this summer with Limp Bizkit, Disturbed, Bad Omens, plus Gojira, Papa Roach, A Day to Remember, Motionless in White, Ice Nine Kills, Cypress Hill, The Used, and so many more. Incarceration at the Ohio State Reformatory, July 17th to 19th. Passes on sale now at incarceration.com. The Sonic Temple Art and Music Festival returns May 14th through 17th with My Chemical Romance, Tool, Bring Me the Horizon, and Shinedown. Plus, Pierce the Veil, Good Charlotte, The Offspring, Sublime, Godsmack, Breaking Benjamin, Marilyn Manson, and so many more. Sonic Temple in Columbus, Ohio, May 14th to 17th. Passes on sale now for as low as $1 down at sonictemplefestival.com. Welcome to Rockville. Returns to Daytona International Speedway May 7th through 10th with Foo Fighters, My Chemical Romance, Guns N' Roses, and Bring Me the Horizon. Plus Turnstile, Five Finger Death Punch, The Offspring, Breaking Benjamin, A Day to Remember, Godsmack, and so many more. Welcome to Rockville, May 7th through 10th. Passes on sale now for as low as $1 down at welcometorockville.com.
Mr. Pipeman here on the Adventures of Pipeman W4CY Radio, the Positively Pipeman segment with powerful business strategies from Michael Barbarita, the Next Step CFO guru. And welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dean. Thanks for having me. So today, I want to talk about adding more value. And, if you go back to a couple of episodes that we had, we talked about, what are the components of a compelling offer? Well, there was scarcity and urgency. There was risk reversal. There was bundling, which we're going to talk about next week. And there was being indifferent to the outcome and being more transformational versus transactional. But today, the fifth component is adding more value to your product or service. So I think, as I mentioned in a previous show, when I was in the frozen cookie dough business, I went in there with no experience, and there were 4,000 competitors, and I was looked at like just another cookie dough. It didn't really matter how great it was, the actual product, because there were 4,000 other choices. And so to try to differentiate myself from the competitors, I offered that. One of the problems that they had is they wanted to offer cookies if they didn't, or even if they did, they really could never bake them nice and fresh because they didn't want to utilize their ovens for something like the secondary or tertiary product like cookie dough. They wanted to, if they were pizza parlor, they wanted to use their ovens for pizza. Or if they're a sub shop, they wanted to use their ovens for subs. So what we did is we gave them a free convection oven, and that added value immediately to the cookie dough product and made a total difference in my ability to get into doors. And so by simply adding that value. And so today I just wanted to give some examples for roofing companies. I happen to pick roofing companies because they're kind of in the same boat. They're very, very competitive. And because of that, they're always negotiating lower prices. You know, it's I don't know what it is where they've conditioned the consumer to never accept the first volley, you know, the first estimate. Because they've done a great job of conditioning and scaring the heck out of business owners in the roofing industry by virtue of always asking or getting a competitive bid that's a lower price and just being price shoppers, which, you know, just doesn't work in business today. And by the way, price shoppers are the most difficult customers to deal with anyway. But anyway,
yeah, totally.
Yeah. So here it is. So some of the things that a roofing company could say is that, you know, that would show that they add more value to the product, or show that their product has more value, is things like, you know, a lot of roofing companies take your insurance money and disappear. And so basically, especially in an insurance situation. So a roofing company could say that we don't take a single dollar until you see materials on your roof, and you keep half of the value of the job until the job is done right. So something like that adds more value. The other thing is we guarantee your final price before we touch your roof. No surprises, no add-ons, and no, we found another problem fee. So that's saying something like that starts to resonate with the customer because they're looking at it where, you know, that the estimate could change, you know, because, oh, we found another problem. But this company is guaranteeing that if they find another problem, that's tough luck on the roofing company. And so just another example, people never, they promised a certain date and they don't deliver, they don't come to do the work on that date. And what the roofing company could say is, we complete your roof on the scheduled date or you don't pay full price, period. And so that's another thing that reinforces the value that you deliver. Customers are worried that the crew installing their roof got hired last week. And so what the business owner can say, as long as they have these type of workers, every installer in your job has at least 5+ years of certified experience. We verify their background before they even step on your property. And so that's another area that they add value. Now, this is a very competitive business, keep in mind, but these are things that you can say that will add value to the customer and get the customer away from price. Tired of roofers who never return calls? Well, your dedicated project manager returns every call within 2 hours, or your next service call is free. That's another added value. Worried about your landscaping, driveway, and windows surviving your roof job? We photograph your property before and after and fix any damage that we cause at no cost to you, guaranteed. How do you know they're not using? How do you know that roofing companies aren't using cheap shingles and pocketing the difference? Well, at our roofing company, we show you exactly what goes on your roof before installation, manufacturer direct, full transparency, no substitutions. So these are things that you can do. You can say, or you can message to the customer, or actually say it in your sales presentation, that adds more value and gets the customer away from the transaction and into the transformation.
I think a lot of times people focus on price only because you haven't presented any value to them yet, and so that's the only thing they can go by.
That's exactly right, and so we keep reinforcing. You know, one of the clients, a couple of the clients we have are in the roofing industry, and it's a very competitive. But it's very hard to get the business owner not thinking about price. And dropping their price and how much, because sometimes it's endless. You know, they're dropping their price, and they're looking at the gross profit. Here's something that they get that can trick them. They look at the gross profit dollars that they'll get on a job. If the job is $15,000, they might get $3,000 or $4,000 of gross profit after bending over on the price. They'll say to themselves, that's $3,000 to $4,000 that I could use. That's just not the way to look at it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not, because if you do those jobs in high quantity, you're not going to cover your overhead. And that's what's happening with a lot of these roofing companies. Their margins are thin to begin with, yet they're bending over just to get the jobs. And that can't happen. And that's just roofing. There are other industries. Look, the frozen cookie dough business, there were 4,000 competitors doing the exact same thing. There was only one way to differentiate. And it opened so many doors. And I even lost money on the opening order. But I understood, I believed in my product, and I understood in the long-term value of the customer.
That's the bottom line too with anything you're going to buy is it's not what it costs, it's what the value of it is, you know?
Right.
So,
but the mindset of the business owner, and this is why mindset is so important in business. The mindset of the business owner is they're putting themselves in the position of the customer, and they're using either their wallet or a lower end wallet, and they're saying, they probably can't afford it. Let me give them a break. That kind of thing. It just doesn't work. Long term, it's just a disastrous strategy.
when I train salespeople, one of the things I train them on is exactly that, because of the fact that, listen, I mean, sales is a transfer of emotion. I don't think any salesperson should get in the mindset, and they do all the time, what they would do if they were the customer. Because not everybody's the same, so if you go in with that attitude, you're, like you were just describing, you're going to have an issue. That's number one. Number two is the fact that, basically you have to find out what's valuable to those prospects and provide that value to them. And that value doesn't necessarily, and most of the time doesn't just mean price. Like you said, incentives, something that gets them to act. Listen, I've bought stuff before just because of something stupid. Like, oh, you're giving me this, like if I'll give you a perfect example. There's one restaurant on their Dine Rewards. Every time you don't come for a while, they send you $10, okay, to use. So, of course, I'm constantly going back to the place because they keep giving me $10.
Right.
What I'm not thinking about is the fact that I'm spending more than I would other places, even though I'm getting that $10.
That's right.
I just think of, oh, I'm not going to, and I do think of it as, I'm not going to throw away a free $10. They're giving me a free $10. Why am I going to throw it away?
Exactly.
And then sometimes when I don't take advantage of it, I'm smart enough to realize, oh, well, I just spent $10 on my dinner at home, opposed to spending $50 to get $10 off.
Wow. Incredible. Yeah.
But
that's
it's
incredible.
psychology.
It's right. And that when you add more value, it gets the customer away from thinking about price and more. In the situations that I described, they might have heard stories about people not showing, contractors showing up late. Most people understand that. They might have heard stories about when their insurance claims, they take 100% of their money up front, and then they just sit on it and do the job like 7 weeks later.
Yep.
All of those things, all of those horror stories get you away from the transaction and into understanding the real value that's being offered.
Totally. And how did they reach out to you to find out your real value?
Okay. Well, go to nextstepcfo.net. You can download a free copy of a book called Powerful Business Strategies. We also update our book by providing book interviews. So go to nextstepcfo.net/contact. Love to interview business owners for the next edition of my book. And the quid pro quo is that you'll learn strategies that your competition isn't doing. Go to nextstepcfo.net/contact, fill out the contact form, and in the message section, write the words book interview, and I'll send you a calendar link.
Nice. Well, thanks again for some amazing advice for our businesses out there, and thanks for being on the Adventures of Pipeman.
Thanks for having me, Dean.
Thank you for listening to the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY Radio.